and a galaxy trembling under Warlord Kraxivor's iron grip. A ragtag human crew defies all odds, toppling dreadnoughts with scrap and ingenuity. How can a species so primitive unravel empires with chaos alone? Dive into this epic tale of cosmic rebellion and discover humanity's unstoppable roar. Continue reading? Then like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more captivating videos to inspire even more amazing content. Warlord Kraxivor's glowing eyes flickered across the tactical holo screen with a quiet intensity that would chill even the bravest of his subordinates. The massive war room aboard the Eternal Dominion echoed with the hum of high-tech systems and the distant crackle of communication channels. The endless starfields outside the viewport seemed to mock his unease. Calm and cold as the moment of reckoning arrived, a single report flashed across the screen, but the data it presented was anything but routine. A Vornax dreadnought, a flagship designed for destruction, bristling with 1,200 kilotons of firepower, had been obliterated by a human salvage vessel. The numbers didn't add up. The Vornax were renowned for their brutal efficiency, able to reduce entire fleets to atoms in a matter of minutes. Yet, here they were, one of their most powerful warships, reduced to space debris by a ship the humans had cobbled together from leftover mining equipment. The so-called ore hauler had been fitted with nothing more than a hastily attached ion cannon, a makeshift shielding system, and a crew of what could only be described as untrained monkeys in overalls. Kraxivor's mandibles twitched. Impossible. His mind screamed. But the evidence was irrefutable. The humans, from that insignificant mudball called Earth, had somehow beaten an empire-spanning fleet with sheer improvisation. They didn't use advanced technology or overwhelming numbers. They used ingenuity, a trait more dangerous than any weapon. Why waste real weapons when you can just MacGyver your way through the universe with duct tape and optimism? He muttered to himself in disbelief. His aide, subordinate Vilas, stood frozen, unsure how to react. Finally, with a stammer, he dared to speak. "Sir, they call it jury rigging, but we call it defying the laws of reality. The Tarsus breach was not supposed to be a fight. It was supposed to be a massacre." The human outpost, a tiny station orbiting the gas giant Tarsus IV, was an insignificant speck in the grand scheme of things. But when the Skolrath raiders, a brutal, hyper-efficient species known for annihilating colonies with terrifying precision, appeared on the station's sensors, the humans didn't panic. Instead, Captain Mara Voss and her crew went to work. The Skolrath raider, Talon's Fang, had a hull reinforced with 700 tons of osmium alloy, and its weapon systems could obliterate the outpost with a single shot. Its crew, hardened by years of raiding, expected little more than a token resistance. They weren't wrong, except for one thing. Humans never play by the rules. In less than 10 minutes, Captain Voss devised a defense so unorthodox that Kraxivor's mind would never be able to fully comprehend it. They didn't activate shields or open fire. No, the humans on Tarsus repurposed the station's sewage system, its waste disposal vents, into a plasma-deflecting haze. The pipes were redirected to release high-energy ion bursts into the station's exosphere, creating a shimmering wall of plasma that masked the outpost's location. The Skolrath fired blindly into the storm of glowing particles, but their sensors couldn't lock onto the target. Confused, they fired a second volley, only to have their shots veer off course. Meanwhile, the human crew activated the second part of the plan, a Gravite-type pulse generator. Crude but effective, it sent a shockwave through the local space-time continuum, tricking the Skolrath ship into warping directly into Tarsus IV's moon. The Talon's Fang, once an apex predator, was now a twisted wreck on the moon's surface. Voss didn't even flinch. "Well," she said with a smirk, "there goes their reputation." Kraxivor, still reeling from the first human report, had no words. Kraxivor stood motionless, his claws digging into the obsidian floor of the war room as the latest human report flickered. Before him, the damage inflicted on the Skolrath Raider Talon's fang was beyond imagination. A species considered unstoppable had been reduced to scrap by a group of humans who couldn't even properly harness fusion power, let alone wield it as a weapon. Kraxivor's eyes narrowed, burning with incredulity. The sheer audacity of it. The humans, those humans, had turned the tables once more. A mining station, equipped with nothing more than crude makeshift tech, had outsmarted the Skolrath in ways that defied every principle of military strategy. How had they done it? It's chaos, pure chaos, he muttered to himself, his voice a low growl. Subordinate Vilas, standing nervously to the side, cleared his throat. Sir, perhaps nothing, Kraxivor snapped, his voice booming through the chamber. The Skolrath, with all their tech, couldn't even see the humans until it was too late. The Tarsus breach was supposed to be an easy victory, but they used sewage vents and a gravity pulse to destroy a raider with 400 tons of military-grade armor. How do you fight something that doesn't even know its limits? The warlord's thoughts raced. These humans are not just dangerous, they are a Levian anomaly, capable of thinking in ways no species should be able to. He slammed a fist onto the table, splintering the holographic display. No more underestimating them. The humans are chaos incarnate, and I will not ignore that again. Deep in the heart of the Shroud Nebula, the unyielding spirit glided through the dark, eerie cloud of stellar gas and dust. The Shroud Wraiths, beings of pure energy that had consumed entire fleets over the centuries, lurked here. Most ships would avoid this place, knowing full well the dangers of encountering such an entity. But not Captain Mara Voss. She wasn't most captains. Kraxivor watched through his command center's monitor, unable to look away. The human ship was on a direct course for the Wraith's domain, its engines humming with the kind of resolve Kraxivor could neither understand nor respect. The Wraith's mere presence had shattered entire armadas, their energy-draining power annihilating everything in their path. Ships that entered their domain were stripped of power, left adrift, helpless. And yet, the humans had decided to engage them. The unyielding spirit powered into the nebula, her crew unfazed by the ever-darker nebula surrounding them. Captain Voss was already ready. While other fleets fled in terror from these spectral horrors, she began broadcasting harmonic energy pulses, an act considered both absurd and suicidal. But that was human ingenuity for you. Captain, the Wraiths are engaging, her first officer warned. Voss only grinned. Let them. I'll make them an offer they can't refuse. With calculated precision, she manipulated the ship's systems, amplifying the graviton field and sending a burst of harmonic frequencies into the nebula. The Wraiths, which had once been thought of as soul-devouring nightmares, responded not with aggression, but with curiosity. The energies they craved weren't souls, they were harmonic signatures. It was a communication, of sorts. The Wraiths, now allies, turned their attention from the unyielding spirit to the incoming Vornax fleet. Kraxivor's heart sank. He knew what was coming. The humans had done it again. They had turned a cosmic nightmare into their ally, an unimaginable victory, a force of nature bending to their will. The Vornax fleet arrived like a storm, a relentless wave of destruction. Their armada, numbering 12 ships, each with 3,500 gigajoules of concentrated firepower, moved toward the unyielding spirit with precision. These were ships built to annihilate, their weapons capable of vaporizing entire battalions with a single barrage. The Vornax had already wiped out dozens of outposts, leaving nothing but charred debris in their wake. They weren't here for negotiation. But Captain Mara Voss was not intimidated. She stood at the helm of her ship, her eyes locked onto the incoming threat, a smile playing at the edges of her lips. The Wraiths, her newly found allies, pulsed with eerie energy, as if waiting for her command. The moment was about to unfold in a way that no one, least of all the Vornax, could predict. The Vornax opened fire, their beams cutting through the darkness of the nebula. Yet, just before they could lock onto their target, Voss issued the command. Now, With a flick of her fingers, the unyielding spirit activated its auxiliary graviton manipulator, a jury-rigged device, cobbled together from spare parts and sheer human will. The device sent out a wave of gravimetric pulses, distorting the space around the Vornax ships, scrambling their targeting systems. In the midst of the chaos, the Wraiths responded. They fed on the gravitational fluctuations, absorbing the excess energy from the Vornax ship's power cores. Within seconds, the mighty Vornax warships, each weighing over 1.5 million tons, were reduced to empty husks, drifting aimlessly in the void. Their weapons, engines, and shields were drained of power as the Wraiths tore through their systems. Voss's voice crackled through the comms, smug and confident. Well, that was easy. Next time, don't bring a sword to a war of ideas. Kraxivor, watching from afar, felt his world crumble. The humans had done it again. Unbelievable. They didn't need firepower to win. They used creativity. The aftermath of the Vornax defeat was almost too much for Kraxivor to process. 12 of their most powerful ships, each with 3.5 million tons of reinforced steel and weaponry, had been reduced to drifting, powerless wrecks by the unyielding spirit, and her captain's unorthodox use of gravitational pulse waves and harmonic energy. The Vornax were a force of nature, an empire that spanned thousands of light years. And yet here they were, humiliated by a species still struggling with basic fusion power. The comms crackled to life, and there was Captain Mara Voss's voice, cool and casual as ever. To the Vornax fleet, consider this a freebie. We've got other things to do, but feel free to contact us for a rematch. The audacity of it made Kraxivor's mandibles twitch in both rage and awe. The humans, with nothing more than ingenuity and the unpredictable nature of their technology, had turned a complete and utter victory into a public spectacle. As the Vornax attempted to regroup, their remaining ships, now nothing more than damaged shells, hesitated. Voss was already broadcasting once more, her tone far from conciliatory. You've got two choices, Vornax. Adapt or get eaten. This isn't a fight you're going to win. Your call. The words hung in the vacuum of space like a challenge no one could ignore. Kraxivor, though seething with fury, knew what had to be done. The humans weren't going to back down. They never did. This wasn't the sort of species that could be subdued with firepower or intimidation. They were chaos incarnate, a force he hadn't yet figured out how to control. He issued a command with tight restraint: engage in ceasefire negotiations. We need to talk. He wasn't sure whether it was fear or respect that made him make the decision. But one thing was clear. Humanity's future in the galaxy had arrived, and it wasn't asking for permission. Kraxivor's eyes burned with frustration as he sat at the head of the War Council. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, the holographic projections around him pulsed with the data of the Vornax fleet's catastrophic loss, and each new report deepened the pit in his stomach. Humanity wasn't just an anomaly. They were a force he was quickly beginning to fear. The battle for control of the Shroud Nebula had been a crushing blow to the SDC's perception of human potential. Captain Mara Voss had done the impossible. She turned the Shroud Wraiths, spectral entities capable of draining entire fleets' power cores, into allies. Their sheer destructive power had crippled a Vornax armada that outweighed the unyielding spirit by more than 30 times. The human crew had tapped into the raw energy of the Wraiths, using harmonic frequencies and gravity manipulation to feed their new allies and, in turn, cripple the Vornax. The total energy absorbed from the fleet amounted to 15 petajoules, a power drain so catastrophic that it left the entire Vornax force incapacitated. In under 30 minutes, Kraxivor slammed a fist on the table, sending a ripple through the tactical grid. "This isn't strategy," he muttered. "This is madness." His advisors shifted uneasily. "Sir, it appears they don't rely on conventional tactics. They adapt. They improvise. That's their strength." Kraxivor's mind raced. The concept of improvisation, of adapting on the fly, was something his species had never truly considered. The Skolrath, battle-hardened, calculating, had fallen to this unpredictable force of nature. Now the Vornax were no better. Humanity had used chaos, not order, to crush their enemies. The more Kraxivor thought about it, the more he understood. Humans didn't fight like other species. They didn't play by any rules he could comprehend. The galaxy had just gotten a new player, and they were playing for keeps. Kraxivor sat in the war room, his four eyes staring at the newly updated strategic data flashing across the holoscreen. It wasn't just the unyielding spirit that concerned him anymore. It was the entire human race. What had once been dismissed as a backward species from a dying corner of the galaxy was now emerging as an unparalleled threat. Human technology, while still in its infancy compared to the advanced civilizations, was something else entirely. They had managed to use scavenged parts, scrap, really, to create devices that defied all logic. The Gravitype pulse generator, the harmonic resonance that bent the wraiths to their will, was a mere patchwork of systems that shouldn't have functioned, let alone been used to defeat a superior fleet. Yet, against all odds, it worked. Kraxivor had ordered the energy output of the unyielding spirit's graviton pulse to be analyzed. The intensity of the pulse had reached a point for terajoules, enough to manipulate local spacetime on a massive scale, disrupting entire fleets. The fact that a species who still struggled with basic fusion had developed such a weapon was enough to send a tremor through Kraxivor's core. These weren't just humans, they were a technological wildcard that could not be ignored. With a heavy sigh, Kraxivor issued the order, reclassify humanity, engage with extreme caution, unleash chaos incarnate. He turned to his officers, his voice low but resolute. They're not just another species. They're a galaxy-shattering force. We must treat them as such. The room fell silent. The universe, it seemed, was about to change, and humanity was at the center of that storm. The eternal dominion hung in the dark void of space. Its warlords and commanders gathered in a tense silence. At the center of the room, Kraxivor sat with his mandibles clenched, staring at the comms feed. The humans, those humans, had sent their representatives, and the time had come to face the reality of what had transpired. The galaxy could no longer afford to ignore them. The time for underestimating was over. The human delegation was not at all what Kraxivor expected. Captain Mara Voss, the mastermind behind the Wraiths' alliance and the Vornax fleet's destruction, stood at the head of the group. Her demeanor was casual, almost dismissive, as if she were addressing an insignificant business matter, not the fate of her species in the balance. Warlord Kraxivor, she began with a confident smile, we're here to talk. Unless you've already decided to spend the next century dodging our calls. Your choice. Kraxivor's eyes narrowed. The arrogance in her tone was irksome, but he couldn't deny the power she wielded. The unyielding spirit alone had destroyed more than 5,000 tons of Vornax warship mass, with little more than jury-rigged technology and an unpredictable strategy. Humanity had already demonstrated they could wipe out a fleet of over 50 ships if necessary. He forced a smile. I don't appreciate being threatened, Captain, but you've earned this conversation. Her smirk deepened. Good. We've got a lot to discuss, and I'm not wasting time. The fate of the galaxy, it seemed, had just gotten a lot more complicated. As the comms feed closed, Kraxivor leaned back in his chair, staring out into the vast, star-strewn expanse of space. The humans had made their point. The negotiations had been more of a formality than a genuine dialogue. Captain Voss, with her unwavering confidence, had spent the entire meeting turning every question into a statement of her species' superiority. She knew she held the power now. Kraxivor's mind churned with the numbers and facts. The unyielding spirit alone had incapacitated a fleet of 12 Vornax warships, each of them armed with over 3,500 gigajoules of firepower and thick layers of armoring, capable of withstanding orbital bombardments. Yet, in under 30 minutes, those same ships had been rendered into lifeless wrecks. drained of energy by the wraiths that humans had befriended. Through nothing more than sheer ingenuity, the harmonic frequencies and graviton pulses they used weren't just science. They were an entirely new kind of warfare. How do you fight that? Kraxivor thought. Humans weren't bound by conventional rules. They didn't need vast fleets or invincible weapons to dominate. They just needed the will to try something no one else would. With a bitter sigh, Kraxivor finally allowed himself a moment of contemplation. These humans, these so-called primitives, were unstoppable. They were chaos incarnate, and perhaps that was the only thing keeping the galaxy from burning. He knew, without a doubt, that humanity's roar would echo across the stars for millennia to come. The future had arrived, and it was human. He just hoped they wouldn't decide to burn everything down along the way.